say your picture is copyrighted. And not what you do not publish. Watch it, it's going to be on TV tonight. Yeah, yes, disappear. Yes, I know. That's very normal. Hello. How are you?
Fine, thank
You have a nice lunch? Nice rest? Feel ready to go? Yes? Wow. You see? Half, huh? Less than half. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? No, don't care. No. It makes no difference. Responsibility. Even when I teach, I got to the point when I was teaching that students would come to my first class, and then after the class they would say, Dr. Berg, do we have to come every class? And I said, no, you have the syllabus, you have the book. If you come back in the 5 weeks and take the test and pass it, I don't care if you're in the class. I don't. If they can go home and study and learn on their own, then because they're not here, then the people who come to class are the ones that really need to be taught. And so it was fine with me.
Yes.
But it took me a long time to learn that. I mean, you teach, and when you start teaching, you're just like all the other teachers. You take attendance and you do all of the things that were done to you when you were in school. But as you go along and you get older, you don't have to worry so much about it. And you change your ways and you try new things. You try new things, and sometimes in trying those new things, you discover that the students learn more. They get more excited, that they're willing to work and do things, And so I think Vietnam has to learn to do that. It doesn't, now you're too constricted by each other. As a social, that's what I was talking about, the social difference between what happens in Vietnam and what happens abroad. You have to learn new ways of doing it. In America, when I teach, people come in and out as they're adults. If they have to go to the bathroom, they get up and go to the bathroom. If they have an appointment, they get up and go to their appointment. If they can't come to class until late, they come to class late. I don't care. It's not personal with me, And we all have to learn. You don't learn by sitting in a chair for an hour and a half. You don't learn from sitting in the chair. You learn if I can excite you to go home and learn when you're in your bedroom, or cooking your meal, or riding your motorbike. That's when you learn. That's when you think, right? You don't learn from sitting in a classroom all the time, right? So I think we need to redefine our jobs. How are we on research? You okay? Did you get anything out of this morning? Is it okay? Did you learn a little bit? Because I'm not teaching you. I'm not instructing you about anything. I'm just trying to have a conversation and sharing with you my ideas and my understanding of research. You okay?
Yeah.
You think about anything to ask me when you're eating your lunch or taking your nap? You have a dream about a research question? You think I dream about research questions? No. I dream about little numbers. Joking. Anybody want to ask me anything? Tell me anything?
So we have two more PowerPoint sets. Are we going to finish all of them too, or what? Can you
Push. The boss.
reorganize it?
The boss. My big boss today. All my friends call my wife my little boss.
Oh.
But when my work, I have big bosses
I will take the
who
same.
really have the power. Yes.
After lunch, I read Sunday newspaper, and I discovered that your name appeared on the 2020 project.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Honey newspaper?
About the 2020 project.
What are you doing there?
I don't know. If I were the minister, I would close the 2020 project. I hope it didn't say that. It's probably there because we did a workshop at CMEO where we trained people who were part of the 2020 to do master plans, strategic planning. You know, but I wasn't impressed with what's happening in 2020, not at all. And I know my friends in the American Council are not impressed.
Yeah, but you did express something.
I did express positive.
That reported your ideas.
Don't trust the newspaper. Don't trust what you read.
Ah.
I'll have to look at that and see.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to pen in, huh? Yeah, I'll look at that and find it. Is it today's paper?
Yes. You and another professor, Mike.
See, that's what happens. I have friends who are newspaper people. Sometimes I go to coffee with them and I talk. And then the next thing I know, it shows up in the newspaper. Because I'm a white boy with a big nose. Okay, that's interesting. But you know, I thought we get our ideas, our research ideas, from anywhere. And I think I told the class this, that I can read the Vietnamese, I can't read the Vietnamese newspaper, but I can read the Vietnamese news in English that I look at, you know. And I think almost every day there's something there that says, oh, that's an interesting question. That's something we ought to look at. The 2020 probably is full of research questions. Why we're doing it that way and how we're doing it. The big question in 2020 would be what we call program evaluation. We ask the question, is this process one that is going to increase English capabilities or not? I think 2020 just took on too much. I mean, you know, they've been trying this stuff in Japan for years and years and years and putting lots of money into it. And yet you go to Japan and you meet high school graduates and they can't speak a word of English. Not a word. Oh, some can, okay, but many of them cannot. And I think for Vietnam to think they're going to change things in a very short time with very little money without paying more attention to the teachers. You know, one of my biggest gripes about Vietnam is they don't do enough teacher training. They don't do enough teacher development. How about research? Don't get me on teachers. How about, anybody know? Nothing? Anything you think about that you wanted to know that I haven't done yet? Anything you want me to teach you that you can think about? Or you want me to decide what to teach you? Come on, talk. No? Nobody? Nobody? I'm lonely. Nobody talks to me.
What do you do to have the convincing literature review?
Again, louder please.
What do we do to have a convincing literature review?
To have a convincing literature review. Most of the problems that I see with literature reviews in Vietnam is that they are developed in a class, you know, apart from the thesis. There's some, usually they're developed somewhere along the line in one of the courses. And then they come around to having to do the thesis, and the next thing you see is a literature review. And you read the thesis question, and then you read the literature review, and you say, what is the relationship? What's the connection? the materials in the literature review are not the important materials addressing the question. So the literature reviews take a lot of work. And a research literature review, one that's going to go with the research question, is usually done after the research question is pretty clear in your mind. Because then you can pull together all the material that really addresses that question or parts of that question, all right? And what the literature review is supposed to do is supposed to say, here's what we know so far. Here's what we know about student-centered classrooms. Okay? And you go through the literature and you try to summarize what's in those materials so that it speaks to the question that you've proposed. And actually the literature review should lead you to a clearer articulation of the question you asked. So, I mean, I hope that, I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, but what makes for a convincing literature review? One that is logically good and held together, that follows some kind of outline maybe, that progresses, in a logical manner, and that it always relates back to the research question or the topic that you're about to investigate. I hate literature reviews. I do. I hate to read them because I'm especially in language and stuff, it's not my expertise. If it's a literature review in an area that I know, then it's okay. But if it's a literature review in an area that I don't have any expertise in, then literature reviews are deadly. I just don't know. You can fool me. I just don't know. I hate literature reviews. I usually skip them. I start, I let the, because I'm not doing any lead roles anymore. I'm not the chair of the thesis anymore. I might help students, but I don't get involved anymore in doing theses themselves. I used to. You guys are too hard on students. Too hard on them. Sorry.
Some research topic. For a research topic, different people have different dimensions to address that topic.
Yes.
So when they do the literature review, should they set the background similar, or should they do differently? When they narrow to the smaller topic, of course, in their literature review, they have to find material to support that closely relate to that small topic. But the bigger one, should many research have similar structure or outline for the literature review? Is it acceptable?
Well, I don't know what's acceptable or not. Is acceptable. What is acceptable usually is in your professional opinion. You as faculty members make that judgment. Don't let someone else tell you what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You have to make that decision yourself. If I'm on a committee, for example, in America we have 3 members to every thesis committee. I think something similar here. You have more readers, but we could all have different opinions about what the student should do. And the chairman of the committee has to resolve it. The chairman of the committee will tell the student, well, based on Dr. Berg's and Dr. Smith's recommendation, I want you to do this, but don't do this. That's nonsense. I don't agree with it. Okay, so you use your professional opinion. I think to me, there's always an introduction to the problem, to the research topic, to the question, all right? That's the foundation to me. And that foundation may be similar across many theses, because maybe the foundation has to do with the pedagogy of teaching speaking or grammar or whatever. but it's more reasonable for me to think that foundation, that introduction to the problem, will be common in some cases across many theses. But once you cover that common ground and you say, okay, here's where my topic sits in my field. This is my field. These are the issues we're having. This is the topic that I want to explore. Once you've identified the topic you want to explore, then in the review of the literature, you really ought to begin to get pretty specific. You ought to only cover literature that refers to the topic. But what students often do, because they want to make the review of the literature huge, is they cover every piece of material they can find that has to do with teaching English. No, that's not what a literature review is. And the literature review doesn't have to be 40 pages. It doesn't have to be 20 pages. Maybe some of them it takes 20 pages to do a good literature review because of the topic. But maybe some topics only 5 pages because there's only a few pieces of good literature. Fine, don't force it. Don't tell the student to fill it up with other crap because it is. It's not germane to the topic. Make sure that all the material covered in the literature review reflects back to the question the student has asked so that it moves the research process forward. It helps understand what we're going to do because she did it 3 years ago, the same topic, and this is how she did it. But guess what? It wasn't really good because these people had trouble with this. And, well, I'm going to correct that. I know what she did, but I want to do it better. See, so we use the literature review and we use our understanding of the field to help us design a stronger position in creating the evidence, and so we can make our case better. But I'm afraid that for me, I could take a red pencil and at least half of all the literature reviews I've read, just scratch right on through them, you know. And they could be smaller, they could be more precise. You know, don't forget. You know, we even got. I ran the environmental studies program for a long time, the masters. We got to the point where we rejected big theses, thick theses. What we wanted was a good 20-page article. In other words, we wanted to teach our students to write very clearly, very specifically about a topic. They didn't have to have all of that other fill in it. They simply had to produce for us a paper which could be submitted to a professional journal and maybe be published. That is a good thesis to me.
So
Yeah.
if we use the literature review of someone do we complete the lecture with?
Would you ask the question again?
If we use someone else's literature review, do we complete lecture with?
If you directly pick someone else's piece of material and move it to yours and use it as your piece of material, yes, that's plagiarism. If you read someone else's material and you identify the literature that has been covered in that material, and then you read that literature yourself, and you write your own literature review from your readings and from your understanding, that's not plagiarism. In other words, when I do research and doing a research subject, you know when you're really getting close to doing a good job because you start running into yourself. A month ago, you identified this great piece of work about the topic that you want to investigate. And now, a month later, you run into the same piece of work again, and the same author. And pretty soon, you know, every time you go to the library or every time you go online, you get things you already know about. You keep on getting the same. Well, you know you're getting there. You know that you have identified all the important stuff that you ought to know about in order to do a good job. And so that's when you sit down and start writing a literature review. But you have to be very careful, you know, when you write the literature review, if you take materials straight from the literature and put it in your work, you can do that. as long as you reference it and as long as you put it in quotation marks. This is not mine. This is that man's. It belongs to him. This is what he said. But I like what he said, and I like how he said it, so I want to include it in my piece of work. You put quotation marks around it, and you reference it. I was talking at break about, we have in America a program called Turnitin.com. Turnitin.com. Turnitin.com is a huge software company that retains all of the written materials in America virtually. I mean, it has every dissertation, every thesis, books, articles, journals, everything. So I can take your work electronically, submit it to Turnitin.com. A few hours later, or maybe a day later, it comes back to me, and everything in your work that is like at all like anything in any of those other millions and millions of work that's in its memory, it will highlight that and tell me where it's from. And like I was saying, if they highlight like up to 10% of your work is highlighted, then you say, okay, maybe that's just error, maybe that's just, you know, you're writing about the same, maybe you did a little plagiarism, but we usually, you know, we don't get upset. If it goes up 20, 30%, 40, 50%, really concerned, you know, and then you can look at the sources and stuff. But the thing about the program is if it's quoted, if the material is in quotes, then you have a option on the program that says don't count that as plagiarism. And you just click that option and that disappears. Because that's legitimate citation. It's not cheating, it's not plagiarism. But like I was telling her during the break, I did a graduate course one time in global poverty, and I was teaching it mainly from Vietnam because I was going back and forth. Had about 30 students in it, and I didn't tell them. You know, I just because I don't do it routinely, but I got their 30 papers, their 30 final papers, and I just submitted it to Turnitin.com, just for the heck of it. Well, 3 of them had 60% or more copied material, plagiarized material. The 3 people were eliminated from the program. They were kicked out of the university. We don't allow cheating. And that was just too blatant. So we talked to each one of them. Of course, you talk and you give them due process. But they had no defense because there was their writing that they turned in as their own work, and 60% of it was work that was done by someone else. Now what happens is when you submit your paper, I submit your paper, and I get it back, and it has no colors, you did fine. But then your paper becomes part of that software. Every paper submitted becomes part of that software. So students can't even borrow a paper that was done at another university if it was submitted through Turnitin.com, because it will show up. You know, and these days, very sophisticated. Students in America, for $100 can buy a paper. Research groups, they call them. And someone writes the paper for them. And usually those go through. But a lot of plagiarism as well. But if the English teachers, for example, use it all the time, and they tell their students. Matter of fact, we make our students submit their paper through Turnitin.com. They don't turn it in right to us. They turn it in through Turnitin.com, and they know they're going to do that. So when you know you're going to do that, you're not going to plagiarize because you know you're going to get caught. That doesn't mean they wouldn't if they had the chance, because they probably would if they had the chance. But once again, you know, a long time as a teacher, a long time ago, I stopped being a teaching cop. If students cheat, I don't care. It's not my problem, it's their problem. Of course, I try to do everything to prevent it, but I'm not going to worry about it day and night and spend all my hours searching to find someone who cheated. I would rather spend my time teaching students who want to know than to be a teaching cop. And you know, it's hard to let go of. I mean, I know it's hard to, because we're raised in a system where it's wrong. But over time, I just let it go. And I don't care. I really. If I find it, of course, they're gone. We have very strict rules, you know. We can give them an F in the class, and then we report them to the Dean of Students. And if they're reported to the Dean of Students by 2 or more faculty, they can be excluded from the university, kicked out. That's because we don't. So we try to discourage it. They know that. Some people. Did I answer your question? And too much. Anybody else? Yeah. I mean, I can do the slides anytime. I'll do the slides real fast. But, you know, you've got the slides.
Đi đi. Đi vào.